It's Monday afternoon here in New York. Welcome to another Mind Shifting Monday with Mitch. And my guest today is Kevin Honeycutt. We're going to be talking about mind shifting, obviously, but we're going to focus mostly on rapport and connection. I will show this at the end also, but I'm going to give you a QR code here. This QR code, since we're going to be talking, and there goes my phone, of course. Since we're going to be talking about rapport and connection, I thought that I'd allowed you to access a PDF, which brings you through different types of questions where you can establish rapport and connection in a difficult conversation. So let me take that off the screen. I'm going to hide that, and let me introduce you to Kevin Honeycutt. Kevin and I have known each other probably for like what, a week now?
At least a week,
At
might be
least
a
a
week
week.
and a half.
Yeah. So we've actually known each other for probably close to 20 years now. Uh, Kevin is a keynote speaker. He speaks on motivation, problem solving, problem based learning, STEM, art, entrepreneurship, and I think one of the big reasons why I thought Kevin would be a great person to have a conversation with is he's got this incredible skill of being able to connect with kids, especially kids who are difficult to connect with. And he uses that ability to connect both when he gives presentations to kids, um, and also when he teaches teachers on how do you reach those kids, because basically you were one of those kids yourself back in the day, before I met you. So, um, Kevin, go ahead, say hi. Anything I left out that you want to say before
No,
we start our
no,
conversation?
just Mitch and I crossed paths years and years ago, and I have been very fortunate.
Oh no, we looks like we have a connection problem here. Kevin, are you okay? So so probably what Kevin's going to do is he's going to disconnect and come in because somehow or other we just lost him. Uh, but I will say, another thing about Kevin is that he's a human being just like you and I are, and there's been a few times during the last probably 6 months where we've gone through and we've actually done mind shifting. Uh, Most recently was about a week or two ago. Kevin decided that, uh, y- as he's talking to teachers all over the world, they're telling him that kids have really changed, um, and he just wanted to see like how much have they changed, because is it because of COVID, is our kids themselves different? And so what he decided to do is to get his foot back in the classroom, and he and I talked, and he was on his way to his first class that he's physically taught as a regular school teacher for probably 10 or 15 years. And he knew that his seventh period class was going to be the kids that really nobody wanted. So he was thinking, he knew how to handle the art class, he knew how to handle the science class, he knew how to handle the English class, but he was thinking like, what, first of all, are these kids going to be different? And second of all, how am I ever going to handle this class of 25 kids, eight of whom have had trauma and are and could conceivably drive me out of my mind. And so he was just, so he called me up on his way to school. And what we talked about is one of the fundamentals of mind shifting. It's contained both in the first book, which was, Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your Happiness and Success. And it's also covered in the second book, which is Mind Shifting, Conflict, and Collaboration. So what the first thing that we talked about, and we were he and I were going to talk about this if he was if he was live, but the first thing we talked about was, well, there's something that precept of mind shifting called the sage perspective. And there's really four attributes of the sage perspective. The first attribute is to take a look at whatever it is that is bothering you right now, or that you have anxiety about, that you're about to do, and to say, in 5 years, is this going to seem important to me? In 5 years, am I going to look back and say, oh my gosh, this was something that really affected my life? And when I asked the question of him, it was like, well, no. And you could just see the whole expression in his body just kind of calm down as he was driving to school. And so this goes to something that we call the Pareto principle, Pareto. Uh, and the Pareto principle says that 80% of the things that we encounter really aren't going to make that much of a difference. Only 20% of the things that we deal with are going to make 80% of the difference. And here's Kevin now. Let's see if he can come back. There you go.
So what happened there?
You know something? I was actually telling everybody that like, you always let people down. You're never around. All that kind of stuff, and I was blaming you. I said you did this deliberately. You just wanted to embarrass me. So, and now you're back. So I can't talk bad about you anymore.
Okay, so to me, it looked like you disappeared
Oh,
in that
really?
area, and
Yeah,
so I thought maybe he lost his internet connection. So let's hope that it just
yeah.
works now. Okay, so
So,
where
so
were
and
we?
Kevin knows me enough to know that everything that I said is a complete lie, because I like to tease people, right?
Yeah.
So I was talking about the conversation that we had, about a week or so ago, when you were going to class, and maybe you can set the stage better than I did. Um, you know, what was the stage for you teaching that class after not having really been a day-to-day school teacher for what, 15, 20 years?
Right. So I haven't been in a regular classroom as the sole teacher for a long time. And my son, this is his school, this is his classroom, and he had told me, it's not an easy gig, but he gave me a rundown of every hour, but particularly 1 hour that was really, really peopled with quite a few, I would say, challenging individuals. And so I was worried about that. I was feeling some pretty good anxiety about that. So I called you because you're my phone call, my coach, my whatever, and I knew you'd have some advice for me. And I was thinking, man, how am I going to handle this? It seemed like I was ramping up. It was getting worse as time went by. And you gave me a short list of things to think about on the way there. And I remember that list. If you don't mind, I'll tell you what that list was. The first number one on the list was, will this matter in 5 years? Which is a great question, because I thought, no, I probably won't even remember this day in 5 years. So that's good. So it took a lot of the pressure off a lot. The second one was, will you learn anything from this? And I thought, yes, that's why I'm doing this, because I want to go back and see what it's like to teach kids post COVID and all by myself in a room, and see if I still got my chops. And then another one of your questions was, will you get to practice anything? Yes, absolutely. All of the techniques that I know, and the ones that I've been studying, and the ones I talk about and expound about. And then the fourth one I loved the most, and it said, how will you celebrate? How will you reward yourself when this is over? Which is awesome. So once I had those four in my head, I was good. I was good. Walked right into that room and did the day. And yeah, there were ups and downs and challenges, but the voice that was derailing me, my saboteur, um, had other things to do because of that list. So again, I keep going back to you, Mitch. If this didn't work, I wouldn't use it. I mean, who would? But you're providing a Swiss Army knife of ways to work with our own brains to get the best result.
And I think I heard a bleep, which usually means that somebody has texted us, and I'm trying to see the option to display. Oh, the chat. There it goes. Okay. Um, and uh, so basically, what we were talking about was something that I call in the books the sage perspectives, and the sage perspective. And one of the items in the sage perspective is, in the long term, is this going to make a difference? The second thing is to look for three different gifts. And the first gift is, what are you going to get a chance to learn? The second gift is, what are you going to get a chance to practice? And the third gift is, whether this succeeds or not, how are you going to, what actions are you going to take? Like, how are you going to reward yourself? And
Uh,
those very often will relieve, a person's anxiety. And, when you get good at it, next time this happens, you'll be able to ask those questions of yourself, right?
mhm,
Or,
mhm.
um, or maybe, just, ask your wife to ask you the questions also. Um,
It's funny, I was telling you earlier, I don't usually remember things like those four things. I'd remember one of them, but I remember them very well. And I think it's because if you put together, the anxiety and the pressure and the stress together with this, somehow, and I always say emotion cements learning. I was feeling emotional at that time. And to me, those adjacent strategies just kind of got inculcated into this. And so it's permanent. So as you start using this stuff, I believe it becomes stuff that becomes part of your strategy plan, your toolbox, if you
yep,
will.
yep. And so, just changing a little bit, like, you teach events, again, all over the world. You teach in the classroom, you teach in front of kids, or you hold events in front of educators for a school or for a district. You keynote at conferences. You speak to associations or to entire states. Let's just focus on, let's say, your STEM building initiative, where you're bringing the group who's attending, very often kids, into building different things. What would it, if you did a 2-day event around STEM, what would that look like?
What we're trying to do is create surprise and delight and play. A lot of that's what's going on there. I'm pretty convinced that if you could just put yourself back to your 10-year-old self and say, what made me happy, what made me excited, and build education around that rather than a whole bunch of principles and ideas and pedagogies and other behaviorist sort of things. That's what it's all about. So we come in and we try to surprise the kids several times, just like a rocket, right? It's got different parts, right? It blasts off and it drops stage one, stage two, we're stage three, and we make orbit. We attain orbit. So I think of it that way. So the first part is we do something small, right? Something they can hold in their hands. We call it tabletop learning. They build a space capsule, and it's really cool, and they get to take it home, and they're excited. And then they go to their break, and when they come back, I have just said before they left, darn, I wish we could do this big enough to climb inside. Wouldn't that be cool? Then they leave and come back, and then sure enough, we've got huge cardboard, and we're going to do that very thing. Based on the same model, now it's going to get this big and this big. It's this big sort of life-size learning. And then it just takes over. Like, I've done these events, they take the whole gym, the whole high school gym is filled with a lunar colony and inflatable buildings that sort of blow up, and then we project on them so it looks like the Las Vegas Dome. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it blows the kids' minds. And I really feel like excitement, right? Excitement is part of this. It has to be a part of it. They got helmets and vests, and it just becomes this really, what my goal is for this to be their favorite day of school ever.
Hmm.
I feel like if that's true, they're going to remember everything that goes with it forever and ever.
And what do you want them, in addition to that, like, what knowledge or other emotions do you want them to take away from that experience?
So I can't talk about that without talking about the simultaneity of my goals for kids and teachers. I want teachers to step aside and be sociologists for a moment and watch what's going on when the game is afoot. When the game is afoot. So it's all exciting, and they have this big adventure that they have to do. You have a chance now to tie in all this other learning. So we got STEM and STEAM in the form of snap circuits and other tools, two blocks, other hands-on learning tools, robotics, programming. That's all built into the mission. So the mission is first. Now, here's the mistake I think most educators make, most education makes, is if you think of what we're doing as a rocket, and it's going to take off and achieve orbit. If it achieves orbit, kids are going to remember this for the rest of their lives. It's going to be this big thing, right? But first it has to leave the launch pad. So what happens is most of a rocket is fuel, right? I'll call that motivation. Motivation, getting them excited, connecting with them, rapport, hitting them in their wheelhouse and getting them excited. So now they're going to be part of it. So this much of the rocket is fuel. This much of the rocket is payload, what they will remember forever. But we get greedy in education. We try to fill the entirety of the rocket with content. with payload. You don't get to do that. You will never leave the launch pad. So it's got to be all this motivation and excitement. And then at the end, they have this. Now, don't underestimate the size of the payload, because the payload, let's say the moon connects to Mars, connects to undersea, connects to museums, connects to history. It all connects. So have the faith that it doesn't have to be this much. I think we try to cram too much payload into a launch.
So I think some of the things that you're saying is that if you were to do if you were to teach these concepts, you could conceivably just say, okay, we're going to learn about rockets and we're going to learn about the moon. If you're doing something about the moon, so here's how much the moon weighs, here's the size of the moon, here's how far it is from Earth, here's how long it takes a rocket, here's how long it takes to build a rocket, and we're going to have a quiz on that tomorrow. And that would have been a lot quicker, right? And they would have gotten those facts.
Yeah, for how long is the question. And
Right.
if you ask them again in a month, and this is why I think that learning evaporates when it's not true learning. Experiential learning is a different thing. And again, I say emotion cements learning. So tying in the thalamus and hypothalamus to the neocortex and making sure that we create what I call smart lightning, right? Where neurons hold hands all the way from the emotion center of the brain to the memory center of the brain, or the part of the brain that remembers, creating a bolt of lightning that can then be brought back through memory, an association. That's forever learning. Everything else is renting with an option to buy.
So taking a step back from the fact based teaching that we doesn't keep the information in the kids' brains, you could have just started off and say, here are the instructions on how to build a rocket ship to go to the moon, or here are the instructions in order to build out of cardboard, or here's the instructions on how to build a colony on the moon. You three take this design, you three take that design, and just hand that to them. But you don't do that either. Why do you spend so much time building rapport first before
You
you
know,
even go into the actual things that the kids are going to do?
I love that you said why, because that's exactly it. Why before how. And we get that wrong so many times, or the why has nothing to do with the child. It has everything to do with our goals. So first I have to find out who they are, right? And once I get them excited and they want to be astronauts and we talk about space, and I've taken the time to get to know who they are, right? And then we can talk about why we're going. So why do we need to know how much thrust it takes to leave Earth's orbit? Because we're on our way. We're in a cardboard rocket, and we've got a mission. And so it's important, right? It's important in this other way, in their own story, in their own narrative. So that's them. This is about them. This isn't some external force saying you need to know this, or we're not going to pass those assessments, and we're all going to be in trouble. Prisons instead of playgrounds. So it's got to start with first just finding that 10-year-old or finding that kid. And I love it because often I get teachers who are acting like 10-year-olds because they're wearing a space helmet and they weren't told to. I can show you pictures, because everyone wants to be a person that's part of an adventure. They don't just want to be a student per se. They want to be an adventurer. They want to be on an adventure. And if learning happens in association with that, I believe it becomes lifelong.
So what I hear you doing a lot then is first, establishing rapport, finding how what ignites the kids, and to a certain extent, that, and then strengthening that connection, and then building on what you know, either through questioning them or seeing how they're reacting, what the kids, what really motivates the kids, and then aligning the activities to the things that most motivate them. Would that
Yes.
be a fair representation? Okay. So then the question is, if that's the process when you're leading kids through these huge projects, how could that be helpful in most of the times that we're trying to influence or give advice to or work with other people?
Finding that common ground, and that's what rapport really is finding that common ground. So what I'm doing in these is creating a circumstance that we're all part of. I'm creating the common ground, whatever that might be, whether that's undersea, whether that's on the way to Mars. And then I know I'm playing here. I understand that. But I'm
Hmm.
also able to see teachers and kids get into it. Get into it. Let go a little bit of all the practical things and concerns and just become part of the adventure. Get in the movie and be a character. And once we're all in that same circumstance, then there are no questions like, why do I need to know this? You need to know this because we're landing in 10 minutes. And I'm not sure we have enough fuel or propellant to bring us down easily. I need problem solved now. Team 2, you're in charge of thrusters. Team 3, logistics. Where are we landing? Who's doing any of that thinking? The kids are like running around like Apollo 13. It's I can show you a video. You have to see that they take this pretty freaking seriously. And shouldn't they? Shouldn't this be rehearsal for a
Right.
real circumstance?
And doesn't this apply to whenever we see gaps in what a person is about to do, or thinks that they should do, or doesn't know, and we want to help them? That, if we can build that same excitement, which we can do with proper conversation, if we again establish the rapport and we tap into what their own internal drives are, right?
As I'm looking at using your questions that you're sharing with that QR code,
Mm.
it's everything I'm doing. With the weird part, Mitch, is that you underpin all of this with this beautiful logic and just enough, but not a bunch of self-congratulatory lists making this 10,000 things long. It's 50. It's 50. It's a Swiss Army knife with 50 blades, and they're all very usable. I find that most of the things that I do when I've been nominated for Teacher of the Year or something like that people find magical. It's not magical. It's strategic. You actually make a list here, and I can go through your list and say, oh my God, I do this much with building rapport, understanding the situation. That's everything about me. Mission briefing. I call it the mission briefing. Same thing, right?
Well,
Exploring
Sammy,
current
what I'm going to do is, while you're talking through it, let me just I'll get it on the screen here, and I think
please,
people
please.
can see that. And
Okay, so
maybe let me make it full screen while you describe it.
okay, so
Okay.
let's go to the top. I'm building rapport. So the mission briefing, that's when I meet with the kids and say, okay, kids, or I meet with the kids and we're pirates, or I meet with the kids and we're stopping a meteorite from crashing into the earth and saving the world. Whatever it is, it's the mission briefing. So that's when we all get in rapport. We all get into the construct. We all get into the situation. We understand the situation. We go through and say, a meteor has been spotted. It's headed toward Earth. It's going to hit us it's going to be going 32,000 miles an hour when it hits us in 365 days. I give them a situation, right? And we all talk about that. What's our current thinking? I know, we'll shoot it with a laser. Wait a minute. No, prove to me that will work. So we have to explore all of that stuff. It's the same thing as what we look at their thinking. We clarify the goals. What do we want to do? Stop the asteroid or the meteor from hitting the earth and save the entire world? Yes. We want to do that in time to save the world. We have to use current technology to find a way to do that. And looking at misalignment, some kid always says, nuke it. And I say, prove that will work. Prove that will work, and we can talk about it. But you can't just say nuke it. Those are two words, and that's a shortcut to real thinking. So we have to look at misalignments between what you think is true and what might actually be true. So again, looking at alternatives. What are other things that we could do? What are you got one idea in your mind, but then that might not be the only idea that works. I need 5 different groups looking at 5 different scenarios. And this happens when you're doing something like a lunar colony, when you're talking about creating, and I always do this, I create what I call optimal ambiguity. I create a problem and that's not easy to solve, and they're going to have to work together, and they're going to have to use collaboration and communication and connection with each other, right? So we kind of build a culture within that lesson that we can build upon later. So as I look through your list here, it's almost like a shopping list of all the elements that people used to say, Kevin, come here and bring your pixie dust. And they would say all these things. And it always bothered me because it's not pixie dust and it's not magical. It's putting yourself in the mindset of a kid and saying, how can this be amazing, productive play? But accidentally, Mitch, you and I overlap from 2 different ends of one tunnel. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I have a result that I never really thought about how I got it because I just put myself in play mode. And you have a set of strategies that can help other people do this. So everyone says, well, you can do this, but other people can't do that. I don't believe that. I've always thought, no, this is design and this can be done. And what I think you've done here is you're creating a set of strategies that people can do this without being struck by lightning or mystical genies or unicorns. We don't have to use superfluous fuzzy, because when we do that, I think what we do is we undermine, people's respect for. I mean, they love it. They say it's wonderful enrichment. I'm glad the kids got some enrichment, but it's so vague. right? And they don't really respect it in terms of pedagogy or in terms of content. So what you're doing is you're saying, here are the things we're doing. This is on purpose, you guys. This isn't play per se. This is on purpose, purposeful learning in an adventure-based scenario.
Well, thanks. And I'll say those 50 questions and the 7 steps involved in the 50 questions, that's gone into in a lot more detail in the book. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I list them in the book. We go through them in the book, but presenting them that way, that's the work of a woman that I know named Kat Neeson, Kat Nissom, and you should look her up on Facebook or actually LinkedIn, Substack. So if you yourself need materials developed, I mean, she took my ideas and she put them into this graphical
Mm.
format. So she's a great contact for people.
No.
So just winding down, I guess, towards we're getting towards the end. So Kevin, if you had something that you wanted people to take away from this, like what would be maybe your top 2 things from this mind shifting with Mitch session with Kevin Honeycutt?
I think one thing I've learned is that Madeline Hunter is credited as saying this, and I don't know if it's true or not, that kids don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And whether or not she's the one that authored that, I still believe that the first thing you've got to do is connect. People have to think, and kids have to think 2 things: that you're like them and that you like them, right? And then you can take them almost anywhere, but I think you've got to earn their attention, and you do that by creating a circumstance that's important to all of us. And that's where rapport comes in. And rapport can't be the first chapter of the book and you never come back to it the whole rest of the novel. It's got to be something you keep coming back to and saying, I call it campfire. Every once in a while, we have a campfire and everyone circles up and we go over everything that's happened. This is all on your list, by the way. Understanding the situation and looking at current thinking. That's where we do that, is the campfire. Then it's really short, really brief. Then we send them right back to the mission again. And we keep doing that to remind them of what they've learned. It's metacognition, so if you
Yep.
want to understand that. But it feels like magic, and it's got to not weigh very much. It's got to be lightweight and look like it didn't really happen. Like all this magical stuff just happened because the circumstance required a hero, and all the kids are heroes in their own journey.
Well, thank you. And I would say, after a few more classes where you're substituting for Ben's classes or you're substituting for other teachers, I'd be really curious to hear how you've been able to, if you found it helpful, how some of these mind shifting concepts, the concepts that are in the conflict and collaboration book or the Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your Happiness and Success, how the concepts from those books have impacted the way the kids are learning, the way the kids are acting in class, and the way you're working with the kids. It'd be fun to have you back in a couple months where you had that experience.
I absolutely want to do that. I want you to know that I'm listening to the audiobook, listening to this thing read to me, that I dropped the PDF in there, and I'm doing that because I can do that in my planning period, and I can do that on the drive to school and the drive home. So the book is informing me and reinforming me as I go. So I can't tell you. It's like I'm taking the medication, and I'm going to tell you pretty soon. So far, the result has been wonderful. I get something out of every single chapter, and I'm not just, I'm not a partner in this book in any way other than I'm glad it exists. And yes, I can't wait to come back, and I'll tell you. I'm sure I'll have some adventures to tell you. I was scared to death. There was no lesson plan. I walk into a music room. I can't play piano. They're practicing the Carol of the Bells. And then here's
Right.
what I did.
Yep.
I'll have a lot of those for you.
Okay, sounds great. Well, Kevin, thank you for for coming here and sharing your wisdom. If people want to reach you, how do they reach you?
They can go to Kevin Honeycutt, HONEYCUTT.org. Everything I have is there. All my social media. Hit me on Instagram. I hit you right back. I'm like a spider. Something jangles the web, and I'm there. Boom, that quick. TikTok too. I'm a creature of social media. LinkedIn too. Just be casual. Hit me up. I'm a real person, and I'd love to help you. If there's something we can collaborate on, man, I'm big guns. I'm always looking for those chances to do that.
Okay.
Thanks. for letting
Thank
me be
you.
on your show.
And
Yeah.
and hope to see more of you next Monday on Mind Shifting Mondays with Mitch. And have a very good Thanksgiving, everybody.